if you value the people that are around you, all of a sudden you view accountability as a necessity to a relationship, right? I got to be on top of my game to make sure that, Matt can be at his best, and I need to be at my best so that he's at his. So those two go hand in hand, and, I think when you have those two things, you can kind of get to what I call, healthy competition. Now you're competing for the sake of, like, the betterment of the next guy, as opposed to cutthroat competition where you're just trying to chop guys at the knees. So that's one thing that that we talk about all the time. We do things within our program to, let those values, kind of play out.
Hey, we are here at the academic Super Bowl, the AAB Super Bowl for West Coast Elite, Seal Beach 2023. I am here with Coach Brandon Linton, the Tufts University men's basketball coach. 3 years.
Yes, sir.
So how's it been going for the first 3 years?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I took over the program after the COVID year where, there was no basketball in our league.
Yep.
Our league made the decision not to play any games. So I took over the year after that. So it was an interesting, start, kind of coming off of 600 days of those guys not having basketball. But from then until this point, it's been awesome. We dealt with a little adversity in the first semester and rebounded in the second semester to finish 13-10, second in our conference. But just a great building block year. And then going into this past year, we were fortunate to, win 20 games and go to the NCAA tournament, get an at-large bid, get to the second round. So the trajectory is definitely on the up and up, and I'm excited about it.
You were at Nichols College in 2019. You took the Bison to 21 wins, Commonwealth Coast Conference Championship. Easy for me to say, correct?
Yep. You used just a CCC.
CCC, you have C cubed, as it were. You were also with the Army before that?
Yes, so 5 years at Army West Point.
And Bowdoin College before that?
Yes, sir.
So what was the experience at all those places that helped you get this job here? Like, how did you find your way there? Did you make a unique relationship or have a bond with Director of Athletics John Morris, or how did that work?
Yeah, it was a combination of a lot of stuff. I was fortunate enough to have just great mentors and work at great places that kind of led me on a path to at least be, I guess, somebody that's attractive for places like Tufts to consider. But I had I knew my wife played basketball with the women's basketball coach at Tufts. So it just started with a text message, once the job opened.
Your wife played with the women's basketball coach at Tufts?
Yes, yep.
So it's a family affair.
Exactly. So, just kind of shot that text like, I would be interested, and I think my name kind of just spread word to John, and I was able to go through the process and was fortunate enough to get it.
So confirm or deny, your wife has a better three-point shot than you do?
It's funny. She does not, but she was definitely tougher, and she was an interior player, so
go hard in the paint kind of lady.
Exactly. We just had a little boy, and I'm hoping he gets her toughness. So.
Oh, I would hope so. I would imagine that your child is going to be at least predisposed to playing a little hoops.
He's got no choice.
Yeah, he's got no choice. I hear you. So you played with Adam Stockwell at Clarkson?
That's right.
And tell me about that experience. It seems like it was somewhat formative in terms of how you coach today, yeah? Yeah.
So Adam recruited me, and I played for him for 3 years before he departed to SUNY Oswego. But it was awesome. Coach Stockwell saw a lot of me that, honestly, a lot of people didn't. And,
what do you mean?
I think he just believed in me as a player. I was a guy that played at a big-time high school in New York City, Holy Cross High School, and we had, just players everywhere. So, it was tough to honestly get noticed in that environment, and I was fortunate to play for Kevin Hamilton with the New York City Jaguars, and, I was able to, at least showcase some stuff. But even still, I was kind of a, 6'3" guy that was playing a little bit of forward, but I had guard skills all kind of growing up. So I self-identified, if you will, as a guard, but I was playing forward. So I was probably a tough guy to evaluate. But
I celebrate you for that, by the way, because at least when I was coming up, there was a lot of traditionalism in terms of coaching. Like if you're 6'1", 6'2", especially in high school, you're playing guard. 6'3", you're playing forward, smaller powered, and bigger, you're 6'5", 6'6", you're absolutely playing in the paint down low. But that's
and you got to think too. I'm from New York City, so if you're every guard in New York City is a little 5'10" jet who's moving around. So to be 6'3", it's like, we're going to stick you down low. So, I think Stockwell recruited me a little bit as a forward, but, he saw that I had some guard skills, and I actually played the point in college for him. And I think I'm formative in the way he recruits now. If you look at his teams, they're all, 6'3", 6'6", 6'7". He likes to recruit big guys because I think You had some success back in the day at Clarkson with me being a big point guard.
That's
We
interesting.
had a pretty big roster for a Liberty League school, and we were able to win our first ever league championship when I was a sophomore, his third or fourth year there. So it was it's fun. I think we could both share in forming each other's careers, if you will.
Well, it's an interesting thing. So that was an interesting juncture in his life and also yours. And you articulated something that I think is starting to become more apparent, but I want to get your opinion from as the subject matter expert on this, which is the players change the coach as much as the coach change or evolve or help the players.
Absolutely. It's funny to see it now. I always joke because I played for Adam, and then my senior year I played for Mark Gilbride, who was really formative in getting me on the path that I'm on now. But I always chuckled thinking back, like, man, me as a player, for those guys, they must have hated me. I was headstrong, and I thought I knew everything. And it's funny as you transition to being a coach, you really that perspective you just can't manufacture it. But I think what you said is 100% true. I'm still learning. You always learn from the groups that you have and the players that you have, and you learn some things along the way where it's just like, oh, I had this thought as a coach, but actually this way might work a little better. I try and pride myself on being an ego-less coach where I force our players to have a hand in things that are going on. If they don't like something, let me know.
Like what kind of stuff?
Anything, any and everything. Our three values, we talk about all the time: are relationships, accountability, and competitiveness. And I think if you're true about that, especially from my perspective, sitting in the head coach's seat, I got to be accountable too. If a guy sees something that, maybe it's, hey, coach, we're running this action. I think it'd be good if we put, Jay in this spot and Kai in this spot. All right, I'll look at it. Oh, wow, that actually works. So you just got to, in my opinion, I feel, be open to receiving it because, these guys are playing it. They're living it. They're seeing it, And I always thought that as a player, I just felt like you could just feel things that maybe the coach can't see on the sideline. So I always want to keep that door open as a coach to know, like, hey, these guys might be seeing something that maybe there's just a disconnect from, not, being in it to kind of see. So yeah, I think that relationship is always going on. And, the great coaches, I think, try and, adhere to it and allow that to grow if it's there. And, obviously it's not saying that everything that the players do or say or how they operate is going to dictate how you, it's not like you just float through the wind with that. But
yeah.
I think if you're just aware of it, there's some stuff you could pick up that could, really make you better going forward.
So we tend to gift the way we want to be gifted. We tend to make food the way we want food made for. So are you, in your coaching, doing the same thing? You're coaching the way you wished you were coached or the way you were coached?
A combination. I think it's everything. I think, coaches are an accumulation of all that, right?
Yeah.
So if you played, obviously, you're taking bits and pieces from your playing days. I think a big part is, the coaches that you played for growing up. That obviously has a huge impact. I also think, I was able to, especially my 5 years at Army, I was able to learn from the other assistant coaches, being on a Division I staff and, having, multiple different guys kind of jump on staff, leave staff. It gives you a cool, unique opportunity to learn from other people who are, doing things at a high level. I always call my 5 years at Army like going to grad school for basketball.
Why is that? Because of that?
Because of that, yeah. We had great head coaches in Zach Spiker and Jimmy Allen, but our assistant coaching staff, we just had, great guys. Justin Jennings, who's now a head coach at a D2 school, Edinburgh. You had Ben Wilkins, who's now a head coach at Seton Hill. Zach Bover, he's probably, one of the hottest, podcast or, handles on Twitter with his pickandpop.net website and Twitter handle. He just does a great job of teaching, spreading the game. So just learning, being on staff with those guys, learning from them. I think we all kind of made each other better.
Yeah.
And, it's definitely been a big part. So just an accumulation of all those things. Coaches, mentors, colleagues, peers, kind of made me who I am.
How'd you get into basketball initially?
Yeah, fortunate. I was, the son of Jamaican immigrant parents. And it's funny, it's not like a traditional, not like a coach's son. I also didn't have like a mom or dad who was, trying to live their dreams through me and forcing the ball in my hands.
That never happens.
Exactly. But I was, I just grew up in New York City, like I said. So just on the playground every day, I just loved it. And I was fortunate. My mom, she was a nurse in Queens, and she was coming home one day and saw a sign for the Flushing YMCA youth basketball program. And she just signed me up because she was like, I don't know, this kid seems to love this ball and playing, so let me sign him up. And
what year is this? How old?
I was 10 years old, 1998. So
So a very formative time, when some of the wet cement years of your life.
exactly. So, and that just catapulted me into, organized basketball, and I was able to connect with great people there that set me on the path in my high school that eventually set me on this path. So
When did you know you were good at basketball, good enough to make a run at it?
I guess, as a kid, you're always confident. I always thought I was going to the NBA, right? So
Yeah.
I was probably always overconfident. But, I think, going into my ninth grade year, I was able to go to kind of a camp for my high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, one of the better players at the camp with a bunch of kids. And I was like, oh, this, I actually might be okay.
Okay.
Then I was able to, play ninth grade basketball with the freshman team. I was one of two guys to get the call up to varsity as a sophomore. So then I was like, oh, this is awesome.
And were you still playing like two or forward? Like, where were you in that situation?
Kind of, yeah, on the wing. But
yeah.
then, when I got bumped up to varsity, it was like straight to the post. And I wasn't comfortable there. And I was, that experience actually, was a pretty formative one for me.
Why?
Because, I had, like I said, I was one of a few sophomores at that school to move up. So it's kind of a big deal. But then from that point, I didn't really get minutes as a sophomore. And then I kind of relegated into, a reserve, and my confidence was shaken. And at the time, looking back, I'm probably blaming like, this coach, I should be playing more. And I just didn't work as hard. I think once I got to that point, like you said, I thought I was pretty good. So I stopped doing the things that got me to that point. And it's a good reflection point now as a coach. I've had multiple experiences. I've been the guy with some acclaim that should be good, right? I've been the guy that didn't get any minutes, that sat at the end of the bench. I got to college and I was the man. So, as I coach now, I feel like I'm able to touch all those guys. The guy that's, prospering, right? He
Yep.
should be this, he should be that, but he needs time and reps. The guy that's not getting minutes, right? Helping that guy, through that, mindset, and, trying to, work to gain minutes, but also trying to, be transparent to be like, hey, this is probably not going to happen, but here's what you could do to affect our team in a positive way. And then the guys that are, the quote-unquote star guys, just managing their mindset and how they go about their business and how they be a great teammate and all that. So it's cool to think back, have all those experiences, I think, can help me coach.
That's great. When was your darkest moment as a player or coach? Actually, coach probably even more than player.
Darkest moment? As a coach, I'm not. It's obviously it's a tricky one, but it's funny. If you're in it long enough, you're gonna deal with players and situations where life happens, and it's not basketball. And we had a player of mine, I won't say at what point, what school, whatnot, but he came into the office, and he really had some troubling thoughts, and was just dealing with mental health, and it was a dark moment, but it was also a moment I look back with pride.
Why is that?
We had practice starting up in 5 minutes, and he came into the office to, express how he was feeling, and, just sent my assistants. I said, hey, you guys got to go start practice.
Yeah.
We got to deal with this situation here. And me and him talked for 30 minutes, and, it's cool for both of us. We still talk and keep in touch, and he's got his own mental health, organization and podcasts and things that he's doing, and a lot of that kind of roots back to that conversation, and just kind of helping him out through that, and it was a cool way to just test my own values. I talk a lot about relationships, and that's the first key to my core structure of my values, and that's what we had to do there. It was like, screw basketball, forget practice. I don't care who we're playing tomorrow. This is the most important thing right now, and it was a dark moment, but it was also a pretty prideful moment to look back on in hindsight.
Simultaneously. And this notion that you learn the most by teaching, you learn a lot from that experience.
Absolutely, 100%.
Biggest highlight?
There's a lot of them. I think as a player, I was winning that championship in 2008 for our school.
Yeah.
First time in 100 years. That school's been around. They were able to do that, so that was cool. As a coach, obviously that first championship as a head coach at Nichols College, winning the CCC. At the time, that was the fourth in a row for those guys, so there was a lot of stakes.
A lot of pressure for you, because that was the first. That was the first
year.
one for you, right? This first year, and if you come in and mess it up,
exactly.
then you came in and messed it up.
Exactly.
So how did you handle that stress?
Honestly, it's I just try and lock into you know my values. Honestly, like we just focus on what we're trying to do, not try and get caught up in the outside noise. My wife's a huge benefit in that regard. She played basketball. She volunteer assistant coach, so she kind of gets it.
Does she
So,
really? To this day, she volunteers as assistant coach?
no. She did
Okay.
when she was going through law school. So she could kind of understand. So she's a source of, just bouncing ideas off of, venting, whatever it might be. And it's just something about women, man. They have a better perspective on stuff sometimes than us men do. So
I think by nurture and nature, they do.
Exactly.
Just better people than we are.
Yep.
And I'm guessing, in addition to her toughness in the paint, you don't win a lot of arguments. She's the winner of arguments in your household.
she's a lawyer.
That's what I mean. She's an
So-
attorney. Yeah, by law, no pun intended.
There's,
She-
just do as I say, do as she says. So
Okay. So this idea of you coaching, you've talked about values now 3 times. So talk about those values. I think there's 3 you mentioned over and over again.
yeah. So relationships, accountability, and competitiveness.
Where does that come from?
That's again an accumulation of me as an assistant coach and kind of figuring out myself through this game, and allowing myself to see what I feel is important, and the things that maybe I along the way were those things were challenged.
Yeah.
I felt that I wasn't at my best or my happiest, working in those environments, right? So it's like, all right, if I get a chance to run my program, I want to value these things. These are what's important to me. When these things are happening, like, I feel like I'm having fun. I feel like I'm liberated. So
I don't know if your wife or son would agree, but you seem like a relatively empathetic person, yeah?
thanks. I try to be.
Yeah.
That's
Well, you're taken from these experiences, and you could be immune to them, or hardened by them, or you could have them change in a more empathetic way how you move through the world. It seems like you've done that, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to I think my upbringing. I was the youngest of 2, and it was just always just in that seat to observe and kind of see and feel and understand. So
Is your mom or dad, are they both empathetic, or like where do you get that from?
it's a great question. I think yes, from both of them. I think they again, Jamaican people are very prideful people.
What do you mean by that?
It's just everything that they do. They think it's the best thing, and they're it's hard to you can't coast in a Jamaican household. But one thing about my mom and my dad, I told you a story about my mom kind of signing me up for the YMCA
Yeah.
or walk home from work. That's to do that. I mean, that takes a certain level of not knowing anything about how anything works. Just having the empathy to say, this kid loves this. I'm gonna do this for him. I think everything that I am kind of comes from them. But those 3 values are everything. I really think relationships. I've found it's a grind, right? All the stuff that we
Yeah.
do basketball-wise, especially as a Division III basketball player, you're going to be, playing from October till March, hopefully, end of March, if you're really good. And, you're going to miss spring break. You're going to, miss most of your winter break. You're going to be around me and the players all the time. So you got to have great relationships. And it's one thing to say, but it's another thing to try and cultivate it. So we try and cultivate that player to player, coach to coach, coach to player, and, certain things that we'll do, obviously, to do that. But that, we don't violate that. As we're recruiting, we're looking to see, obviously, guys that embody that as well, and guys that we want to bring into our group to, strengthen the relationships that we have. And then accountability, I think it starts to kind of go hand in hand with relationships. But if you value the people that are around you, all of a sudden you view accountability as a necessity to a relationship, right? I got to be on top of my game to make sure that Matt can be at his best, and I need to be at my best so that he's at his. So those 2 go hand in hand, and I think when you have those 2 things, you can kind of get to what I call healthy competition. Now you're competing for the sake of like the betterment of the next guy, as opposed to cutthroat competition where you're just trying to chop guys at the knees. So that's one thing that we've that we talk about all the time. We do things within our program to let those values kind of play out.
That's a very elevated chemistry. I mean, that's tough. But if you can get it right, of course, it's beautiful. If you can get it wrong, or can't get it.
Exactly.
So that's the value. I mean, beyond what you've already said, is that the value of the student athlete coming to your school? Like beyond, like what is it? Like if there's a parents are thinking about, they're listening to this podcast right now, maybe some coaches as well, some players trying to figure out where they want to go and how they want to move through the world in their next phase. What's the value of a student athlete coming to your school playing for you?
Yeah, I think it's it's a place that we like to say it's going to be a transformative opportunity. I think a lot of you know, especially at the higher levels. But, a lot of things are transactional, right? You come here, we give you this, you pay this, you do this. But
Yeah.
what we try and do is, create a transformative experience for guys. Obviously, that includes on the court, but, more so off of it as well. We want guys that are going to, come and be excited about, engaging in our alumni network and, looking forward to what, the 40 years after, these four are going to do for them.
Do they understand that? Do they get a sense of that value?
That's part of, a 4-year process with us.
Yeah.
It's explaining it on the front end, but, it's following through with that as they're, going through the program and going through those 4 years.
When you mean, the beyond basketball, the rest of one's life, value add, what does that mean explicitly? Tell me some examples of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything as simple as, getting a job opportunity, being able to, lynch a guy with, a former alum or a resource that, those guys can get career earning opportunities from.
Yep.
It's also something as simple as, 10 years after they're gone, getting that wedding invite to, come watch them go down the aisle with their loved one, right? So it's any and everything. It's all those things that, again, like I think about, my journey post, college. Obviously, I got to coaching, but I'm doing something I'm passionate about, and like I'm able to, just keep connected with my, tree of people that I've met along the way, and that's all. We're just trying to make that tree for them as fruitful as possible, right? They're going to have a great experience here with great teammates. They're also going to, be able to get a network of alums at Tufts that are going to just enrich their lives in so many different ways, and I just think it's something that compounds over time. But those are all the things that we, try and harp on and get right. The basketball stuff will take care of itself, but that's what's most paramount for us.
You've mentioned family up and down your food chain, up and downstream, your parents, your son, your wife. How do you talk to a family who's thinking about bringing their child or wanting you to look at their child for playing opportunities and for obviously educational opportunities?
Yeah, the big thing that we talk about with our staff is, transparency. It's a lot, right? I think I'm fortunate to be at a school that is a destination for, kids. They want to, go to Tufts because it's, in Boston. It's bigger than most, liberal arts universities. Yeah. It's just got a lot going for it, right? So on the one end, it's cool because, there's a lot of interest. But on the other end, it's like, all right, well, there's probably a good chance that we're, turning away guys that are really good because, we can only bring in but so many every year. So transparency is big. I think that's, one thing going through the process and, kind of knowing how sometimes coaching and recruiting could be, that there's a lot of games that kind of get played and a lot of we try not to do any of that stuff. It's really just trying to look across and see them, if they're in my office sitting on my couch, just trying to think about, all right, one day, hopefully that's maybe me and my wife and my little boy, right? So what I would want in that situation is, somebody to be straight up and kind of, tell it how it is. So that's what we do, and each family's different, right? Some, some will look for this, some will look for that. Yeah. Some guys are higher on our list, some guys are not. So it just depends on, what that family is and what they need at that time, and we try and, kind of deliver and kind of meet them where they are.
How's the NIL and transfer portal affected your job?
Honestly, we're pretty fortunate where, it hasn't affected us really in any kind of negative way. Okay. I think the NIL at the D3 level is still, kind of a novelty where, I don't think we're really sure at our level how that's going to impact things yet. So it's really a non-factor right now.
Yep.
But the transfer portal, it's one thing that, we don't really spend much time in the transfer portal. Part of it is because our school is very strict with, transfer application deadlines. And, I think the deadline's March 15th. So, by that time, a lot of kids are still trying to figure out, what they're doing. So
Right.
The timeline doesn't really work for us to engage in it. And, it's not something where, our guys are really looking to do as much. So luckily we're pretty good. We're not affected by a lot of that stuff that's kind of going around the rest of the country, if you will.
Wow, that's amazing. So you talk about D1, D3, your D3 school.
Correct.
What does that mean to a family that doesn't know anything about the difference between D1, D3, D2, D7?
Yeah,
There's not
yeah,
many
yeah.
Ds, but,
Obviously, it's, the big difference is, the time that we're allowed to, be with those guys. So at the D1 level, you're going to be doing summer workouts and, you're going to, as soon as school starts in the fall, you're going to be, doing stuff for the team.
Yeah.
Whereas at the D3 level, we're only allowed to, work with them from October 15th until, whenever the season ends in March.
Right.
So it's less time, but on the other side, the one thing that we talk about, and the reason why I love Division III is it allows, we're the truest form of student athletes, right? So you're getting, you're able to kind of explore who you are as a student, both in the classroom, but also, outside the classroom, right? What you want to be about, what kind of, initiatives that, you want to take part in and be a part of. So you could actually explore yourself as an individual and find who you are, which I think is pretty cool, while also getting a high-level basketball experience. So the basketball is more directed, more condensed, and it's kind of more potent, if you will, and you're allowed to kind of still have your time to, be a person, where I think you probably lose that to some degree at the D1 level. That's kind of more of a, in a lot of ways, it's kind of employment, and especially now with how NIL is going. It's
athlete first, then maybe student afterwards.
Yeah, and that's not everywhere. That's not to generalize the whole Division I landscape, but it is definitely much more of a transaction where it's like, hey, you're getting the scholarship, but you're on our time, and there's benefits. Obviously, it'd be nice not to have to pay for Tufts and get a scholarship, and on the other end is
you don't give away scholarships at Tufts.
No,
Yep.
so Division III, we're not allowed to give any athletic scholarships. So that's it's all a trade-off, right? And I think part of our job too is just explaining kind of where we're at, and I think you start to attract the guys that it's meant for, and the guys that it isn't, it's probably not a good fit anyway. So.
Is that what brings you here to the all-academic AAB Basketball Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's they do a great job of getting some of the nation's top academic athletes, and a big thing at Tufts and schools like us is trying to get kids through the admissions process.
Yeah,
could be a challenge. So to be able to come to an event where the kids are pretty high caliber student athletes, makes our job a little bit easier. So
right.
It's and it helps being in Seal Beach, getting some nice weather for a couple of days. But yeah, that's the big reason for coming to these events. It's just the best place to see top athletes who are high academic students as well.
There's a really coal coffee shop. It's only here. It's called Starbucks. You should check it out. It's one of our local offerings. So when you talk to a player and they're trying to figure out whether or not it's better to be able to create their own shot, be a freelancer, freestyler, or work within a system, what do you tell them? What's the ratio, or is there a ratio?
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of our program and how we play. We want guys that are going to be able to make plays. So we try and put guys in a framework to then allow them to read the game and play freely. So a piece of that takes time too, right? To learn all the different options and concepts and things that we'll talk about, right? To be a flow team like we call ourselves. You can't just roll it out there, and that doesn't mean just all right, everybody go do what they want to do.
Yep.
But once you learn the reads and the concepts and the spacing, then you start to realize, oh, it's just basketball. And now basketball just a lot of times is making a play and being better than the other guy in front of you. So we always say it's a players program, and I think those guys enjoy kind of playing within our framework.
That's great. What's next for you?
Honestly, we're finishing out this camp, and then it's been a long spring into summer here with the recruiting. So honestly, going to take a little bit of time here at the end of July and kind of decompress, get organized, and then once August hits, we start gearing up to the school year starting, and our guys are turning and trying to wrap up our recruiting class for the next fall. So what's next is some downtime, which I'm looking forward to.
Probably very well deserved with the family.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Coach Brandon Linton of Tufts, I wish you the best. Thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.